Maybe I'm thinking about it a bit too much. But anyway, he interrupts them and brings them back into the therapy session. And here I finally found a good picture. So this is how these therapy sort of scenes are set up. They're always cutscenes. They're always these, you know, May and Cody sitting next to each other, looking at this therapy sessions screen, or rather board, and Dr. Hakim telling them about the next part of the therapy, which is also the next chapter. And this next chapter is about attraction. So Dr. Hakim says, blah blah, what is the most important in a relationship? And Cody says something like, oh, mortgage. No, May says something like mortgage or whatever, and he says, no, attraction. You know, Dr. Hakim says, no, it's attraction. And they are transformed, or transported rather, into a snow globe in their house that is built in that is sort of like, you know, like a winter wonderland. And honestly, visually, I loved this environment and this chapter the most, because I really like mountains. One of the reasons why I play Skyrim, and like, you know, generally mountains, mountainside, alpine, alpine environment is my favorite. Actually, I recently started a Discord, so I wanted to start to grow a certain community, like to have like a core community as well. It's down below if you want to check it out. It's called The Mountainside, and I'm trying to frame it as mountains, sort of like a little bit like you have the starting hut, you have like the après ski, which is sort of like general chat, stuff like that, you know. Thank you, Anna, thank you very much. So yeah, anybody that's interested, obviously now I just started it, so I don't want to do any false advertising. It is a little bit dead right now, but I'm sure that we will breathe more life into it as more people join in. Gus is there as well, by the way, Anna. Thanks, thank you. But anyway, they are in this snow globe. By the way, what I forgot to mention in this cuckoo clock where they are, when they eventually clear it, when they clear the cuckoo clock, they also fix it in real life, and Rose notices that it's fixed. So, like, obviously, they show through these cutscenes that what they do in this doll world has an effect on what happens in real life. Not only like stuff getting fixed, but also perhaps their relationship like blooming. That like it does matter what happens in this doll world, and I think that's a smart way the game is portraying that. Like clearly, as these things have effect in real world, like fixing of the cuckoo clock, then the relationship building or rebuilding rather has a real world effect as well. But anyway, we are in this snow globe on a quest called Attraction, or rather like for the reasons of attraction. The special abilities here are again tied to the attraction kind of like therapy, what the therapy was about. This one wasn't as smart though, because the abilities were literally a magnet. It was literally just an attraction, like a literal attraction. So Cody has like a red magnet, able to attract red things, like red signs. So he has one pole, May has the other pole. Essentially, that's what this is about. But yeah, they can connect to each other as well as to like other places in the area. But an important part of this environment, apart from it being like really beautiful and everything, is that it's like a recreation of the place where they have been when they were just lovers, when they were just boyfriend and girlfriend, essentially. And it's also the place where Cody proposed to May in like real life. And their whole quest here is about ringing bells around the town in order to wake it up. It's sort of snowed in, nobody's around, and the more bells they play, the more the town comes to life. They're like actual like blob people that like frolic around, and sort of life returns to the town as they like commit as they do like finish these levels in the game essentially. And what this is doing is what this is doing is essentially, I think, bringing life back to their romantic life. You know, I feel that as the story progresses further, it has this tendency to make some of this like nice subtleties in the story a bit more obvious. I don't know why it does that, but like things become less subtle and more obvious, and sometimes it's a bit distracting. Like for example, you do a couples therapy a session about attraction with literal magnets. I felt that that's, you know, a bit simplistic perhaps, that it's a bit obvious, so I didn't like that too much. And then again, like literally waking up the town is like waking up the spark in their relationship. It's nice, it makes sense. Can't really talk when I'm too far away from the mic because I have like noise gate and everything, filters on that, so you wouldn't hear me. But what I was saying was, what's important, like there are these important things like waking up the town, meaning like waking up their relationship, and it is clearer and clearer and more obvious. But it makes sense for the story, and you know, I'm not, you know, too bothered about it. But then we have the penultimate chapter, which is the garden, and this is the sixth one out of the 7 that I absolutely artificially separated. And it's essentially about passion, right? So the therapy session that starts it off is a therapy session about passion. Right. So they're sitting there speaking about passion, what's important in the relationship. It's passion, and they discover that one of the passions of Cody, or his main passion perhaps, was gardening. And the gardening he does around the house in real life sort of died down a little bit. It wasn't as prevalent, and in his life he just completely forgot about the garden. It became overgrown. The greenhouse is in a sorry state, and they have like a discussion about it that I feel is really important. May said that they moved to this house partly because Cody wanted to make his own garden, and that Cody let it go. Cody says that she never encouraged him or appreciated what he did, and May then becomes like really defensive. So now it's my fault. So, you know, you have this like really realistic kind of argument that would happen in real life as well, which is the good thing about this story. Like it is relatable. Obviously, the relationship, the characters are relatable to real life. It does happen. What these people are actually living through on the emotional sense. Obviously not. Obviously, I didn't mean like actually waking up as dolls. Doesn't really happen. But they are living real emotions. The dialogues tend to be good, in my opinion. Maybe they are a bit more cartoonish when they're like dolls, but when the couples therapy session or when the real world cutscenes come about, they tend to be kind of realistic and really sets you into the reality and reminds you that the story isn't just about you running around in split screen and completing puzzles. Because obviously, like when I talk about it like this, you can see the clear link of the story. But to those of you that watched it, you already know. But if you didn't, this story is spread across about 15 hours of gameplay, most of which is like either killing a boss by shooting at it with like special abilities or solving puzzles. So there have to be like these grounded cutscene dialogue that grounded dialogue in cutscenes is what I meant to say, that shows you that you are still furthering a story of like a broken relationship and a broken marriage, and there's this daughter that wants them to get together. So there are real stakes in this story. It's a real story, and the story does and the game does well to keep the story alive. And this part, well, this chapter, Garden, which is about passion again, as I said, does this couple's therapy kind of game a little better, because you have these special abilities. Cody's special ability is a little stupid, honestly, because his special ability in this one is literally that his head is like a leaf or whatever, and he can extend this leaf and catch something, or he can plant himself. Like, that makes more sense. I'll explain why. But May's ability is watering plants. Essentially, she has this like watering gun or whatever, and I think that makes a lot of sense, because this is about Cody's passion for the garden, for his gardening, and the issue why this gardening stopped is because May didn't support him enough, or that's what he felt, at least. And that's, by the way, a question maybe I pose to you. Like, whether that's, if you have seen the game, of course, or if you've played the game, whether that's not a bit reductive as well, because like, in a way that it's set, it's like, it's May's fault, essentially, like, obviously Cody has to rediscover his passion as well, but May is put into this supporting role, like, now you support him. But anyway, moving, like, this is just like a minor thing. I don't actually have like a real issue with it. But the nice thing about it is that now like, she's in this supportive role. I can see that, yeah, but like, I kind of understand it. And now she's in this supportive role, and Cody kind of plants himself in the garden, if you will. So it still makes sense on a metaphorical, analogical point of view. And they are kind of fighting the weeds of the garden, which could be also implied that they're like clearing the debris of their relationship. They're clearing it up, making it nicer and nicer. As at the same time, Cody discovers his passion, and May helps him with that passion as well. One important thing in this garden is, apart from clearing the weeds, there is this important part of the story, and it's this one, that, like, I see why they put it there, but it is kind of cheesy. There's this flower that Cody planted in real life, and it's called Joy. And he didn't have enough time to take care of Joy, so Joy kind of withered away, and now she's like overgrown with weeds and stuff like that, and they need to fight her corrupted form in order to save her. So they are literally fighting to save Joy, and it is like, this ties back to like what I said about the loss of subtleties. So whenever you have a story and you want to have a message in that story, but at the same time you want this message to seem more profound, you would enclose that message into like interpretations that the viewer or the reader will make for themselves. Because if something is spelled out for you, if a message is spelled out for you, like, we could say, like, now they are fighting together. Like, there could be narration, right? Now they're fighting together to save Joy, or now, now recover joy in your life, or something like that, having as your main objective, or something like that. So doing that in a game, obviously, or in any kind of medium, like, sort of telling rather than showing, or making you see it for yourself, is kind of cheapening the message, because it's told to you. But when you make that interpretation of that story point, you feel like it's your interpretation, like your understanding. So it's deeper, it's more profound, because it is you who made that connection in your head, so it immediately feels more profound. So that's sort of like very easily explained, like why messages are meant to be subtle. But sometimes it is too subtle and people can't really see it in that. And then you have these situations in literature classes all around the world in high schools where, the teacher will tell you, oh no, by, blue skies, he meant blah, blah, blah. And the students will say, nah, this is bullshit. By blue skies, he meant like that the skies were literally fucking blue. There are these subtleties. Sometimes it's too subtle, so the interpretation seems like really artificial. But sometimes it's not subtle enough, and at that point you can say that it's either pretentious, which I don't think this is, or that it's too simplistic, and that's what I feel here. I hope that I didn't overcomplicate it too much with such a long explanation, but I wanted to tell you exactly like where I stand, or what my opinion on this is. It's that the story, that the message isn't pretentious, it isn't stupid, it makes complete sense, but it's made so subtle and obvious that it sort of takes away from how profound it feels to me. And again, explaining why I see that too obvious. Yeah, exactly. They are literally fighting to save a flower that's called joy. They are fighting to save joy, right? It's not explicitly said there, but they're like yelling, joy, like we have to save joy, blah blah blah. It's it's sort of on the line. No, you're right. It looks a bit too easy compared to the rest of the game messages. Yeah, exactly. People do like that, I feel. Yeah, I mean they do. Again, I might be like a bit too harsh when it comes to this, but I like again, it's a video game, right? And video games are geared, whether this is more about like a romantic comedy or something like that, it is still geared towards children. But like, I like what Ricardo Man said as well. It's more comparing it to the rest of the game that I know the game can do it. Like for example with a vacuum, right? The way the vacuum was sort of set up at the beginning, when I spoke about that in the beginning, you would have like May say like, I told you need to like fix the vacuum, and the vacuum is like really angry at them that they didn't repair it or whatever, and May would say, why didn't you do it? Like I asked you to do it. And Cody would say, but like I'm not meant for these things, or blah blah, or I forgot, or something like that. And you can see the characteristics and the issues of the relationship in this, like, is essentially 2 sentences, 1 simple dialogue. And I mean, yes, if you had only that and none of the more obvious ones, then maybe people wouldn't be able to read into it like too much. But like then you have like middle grounds where you have time and they're running around in a cuckoo clock, which is a little bit too obvious perhaps. But then you have like special abilities based on the perception of the other person, like Cody being able to plant himself and May supporting him planting himself by being able to water him and therefore support him. Which, there is the level that is obvious, i.e. rediscovering his passion in a garden. So he's literally rediscovering his passion because his passion is literally garden. But at the same time, a part of this is also like interpretation that are more subtle and less obvious. Like for example, the fact that since he's planting himself, he is the person that's investing himself into the thing. He's literally planting himself into the ground in the gameplay to like become flowers and stuff in order to fight enemies. And since he does that, he's investing himself into his work, into the passion, into the garden. And since nothing can grow what is planted unless watered, provided the right nutrient, that's considered the support. So May is literally has this water gun. She's watering him, as in like giving him the necessary support for him to discover, for him to blossom, sort of to discover his passion and blossom. So that's kind of the level, right? So we have the obvious one all the way to the subtle one in one in like a series of things, which is what I really like. But then from time to time the game kind of, it sort of feels like there's a different teams of writers, and another team of writer decides like, this is cool, but let's make something like really obvious, like saving a flower named Joy. So unexplainably to me, like there are things like, for example, there was no need for there to be Joy, and I feel it would be better if Joy wasn't there, and instead they would fight some like massive weed that basically was the brains of the whole weed apocalypse that happened in the garden, because that would be more like more about the fight against Cody's laziness and lethargy and essentially unwillingness to further his passion, more rather than having to save Joy, which seems like a little bit removed from passion, and at the same time kind of simplistic, I felt like. But anyway, that is it for chapter 6. We still have chapter 7, which we will just go through really quickly. The ending is really important and really interesting and kind of touching, so I will let you know what I think about it in just a bit. I'll just have to go to the toilet. I'll be back in like 40 seconds. All right, don't go anywhere. Alright, I'm back. I'll just make myself another cup of tea. I thought we would be done in like 2 hours. We are nearing 3 hours. But I mean, I had great fun with you. Lots of discussions and debates. Interesting talks about our favorite streamers and YouTubers. And then again, like, these reviews always take a lot longer than I imagine. I mean, I say always, this is only my second one, but I imagine they would always take a bit longer. But I don't mind, as long as I have enough green tea, we can chug on forward. Okay, the last one. The last chapter and the last therapy session from Dr. Hakim. And this one is about passion. Again, the previous one was about passion and this one is about passion. The reason why I phrased that, and I didn't forget, but it was literally the same way it was phrased in the game, and I found that funny. Because they get transported back after like managing to overcome everything in that garden, and then Dr. Hakim, the book, says the next one is about passion, and they're like, what? And he's like, again. But this time it's about May's passion, and May's passion happens to be singing, or happens to have been singing but she kind of like withered away from that. Or she decided that she doesn't want to do it anymore, that she's maybe too old, that she doesn't have time. But Cody really kicks into gear like immediately and reminds her that she used to sing a lot, that she's a great singer. Yeah. By the way, sorry to this is a bit out of... interesting. So sorry. I just got really weirded out because I've only noticed in the chat that Gus and DB have this Prime Gaming tag on the side of their name, and I thought that that's only possible if you're like subbed or something, but like you can't sub to me, right? So that's strange. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. If Anna, I think I didn't tell you yet, but I have to repeat it from time to time. I have ADD. I have an attention deficit disorder, so that's why sometimes my thoughts trail away a little bit. That's why I'm drinking green tea, by the way, as well, because it helps me with focus a lot. But what happens in the last chapter is that they're transported. The Prime Badge is there no matter what. Is there, really? Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I think you're doing great. Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate the support. Like, it's so great that you stuck here with me and that you're still chatting. I really appreciate that. You are a really nice person. Yes, so we are transported to the attic. And we are discovering, or rather like helping May Passion, which is singing. Their main goal here is quite simple. They have to go through the attic where there's lots of like music discs and different jukebox and stuff like that, and they have to assemble a concert hall, or rather like a stage for May to sing on. And they need like speakers, microphones. They need a band, or rather an orchestra in the end, and they need an audience and lights and stuff like that. So they go and they gather everyone. They gather some like heavenly people without any limbs or heads that will play in the orchestra. They find the speakers and stuff like that. There are lots of like really cool things that I'm like glossing over here. Like, for example, yeah, there's like loads of mini games that I didn't really cover along the entirety of the game, because usually they don't really add to the story that much. Usually they're just like to see like who's better at something, you know. It's kind of strange that these mini games are almost always competing and it's on points, because the rest of the game is cooperative, right? But these ones, you're literally trying to beat the other person. That's why I didn't like mention them, because it's competition rather than cooperation, which is literally the opposite, even in a story perspective, in my opinion. But here, one of the mini games is actually creating a song. So you have like some kind of like DJing table, and you can add beats to it. Each player can add beats to it, and then like it gets saved and it plays for like the rest of the section while you're playing the game. So for the rest of the gameplay in that specific section, the music that is being played, and by the way, this game has beautiful music, of course, the music that's being played is the music created by you, which I think is really cool and adds to the atmosphere in like huge way, because you're literally customizing your own experience and, you know, putting yourself in the game, making this kind of couples therapy session maybe a little bit more personal, perhaps. Again, going back to Gus's point that you are somewhat in a couples therapy session whilst you're playing this game. But that is it for what I want to say regarding the gameplay. Back to the story, since we're almost there. yes, there's this final scene. Where May is in the locker room, or this is like the penultimate scene of like the doll life, except doll universe. And May is like really scared of going up there because they gathered everything, and including like an audience, and the audience are just like anthropomorphic life sticks. Just imagine playing this with your partner or friend. I bet some things would come up. Yeah. That's why I would struggle to suggest like other couples to play it, because you're exactly right, Anna. Like I think I think some things there maybe are too real, like too open to discussion, in a way that like some would support some point of view, the other person would support the opposite point of view. So I don't know. I don't know if I would like to play it with like a significant other at some point. No. But anyway, going back to the locker. So May is like really stressed out because she didn't sing for a really long time, and she's she doesn't want to go out there to perform in front of these like light sticks and whatever. And Dr. Hakim like goes into the locker room and tells her like, it's time, like blah blah blah, and he has this Mexican accent and it's cringy and stuff like that. And then like May tells him like, it's not like, I'm so afraid that it's not gonna be perfect, it's not gonna be good or anything like that, and I'm gonna be so embarrassed. And at that point, the book suddenly stopped being cringy, and instead just out of nowhere became like thoughtful and like really touching. And I have a quote from the book here somewhere, and hopefully I'll find it. I have literally 12 pages of notes for this entire stream, so it's difficult to find. Here it is. Okay, so when May is struggling to go out on the stage and tells like Dr. Hakim, it's not gonna be perfect, he says, "You weren't born to be perfect, you were born to be you," which is the last thing Dr. Hakim actually tells either of them. And I mean, this could be interpreted as like cringy when you like focus on it too much, but like it's written or it's shown in such a cozy way, where the book just like stops being like this Dr. Hakim crazy cringy motherfucker, and instead says like something like actually profound, like, listen. And it seems like a message to the player as well, like, listen, you don't have to be perfect in every way, like that's not what it's about. It's about somewhat like, I feel the coziness of that sentiment. Yeah. It's about discovering yourself and being yourself, and once you are yourself, then you will succeed. And I really like connected with that as well, and I feel it isn't necessarily only in the relationship that something like that takes place. Like, for example, when I decided to stop studying psychology, I felt like that isn't me. I want to be perfect in a way that I wanted to study on this like good university and have like a proper title within the academia and like be perfect in that way. But I decided that isn't me. I worked for years in agencies to like, obviously make money and at the same time have this kind of perfect kind of financial economical record. But then I realized that isn't me, and moving forward, I realized that like writing is me, or making films is me, or streaming as well is me. I wouldn't be doing it unless I thought that this is actually something that's going to be like an important part for me, for my life, discovering these communities and stuff like that. I hope I'm not getting too personal, but I'm just saying that this sentiment, you weren't born to be perfect, you were born to be you, is something that not only is very profound and important, in this story, or something to realize for a lot of people, that it's not made like it's not pretentious here, fortunately, but at the same time it's shocking how suddenly profound it is in the story. Like, it does kind of like jolt you a little bit, and maybe it isn't like a smooth transition, but it goes from like funny, jolly, blah blah blah, let's get these light sticks as like audience and play these mini games and whatever, to like sudden absolute like seriousness of the story, right? So it goes from like fun atmosphere of like not like too many stakes and anything, to like really serious atmosphere. And rather than there being like a gradual build up, there's like a sudden jolt from like with this very statement and this scene in that locker room, and this long walk that you see on the screen right now, where you literally have to press or then hold E and watch her walk that long corridor. Suddenly, like, you are being jolted into seriousness, like no longer fun and game, this is serious story, okay? And that's rather interesting. I don't know if it was meant to be that way. I don't see why, but perhaps it was, you know, necessary for the timing or the pacing. I don't have too much problem. I don't have too much of a problem, but it did jolt me a little bit, and I just wanted to say, you know, that it did happen. And I don't have an issue with it. It's kind of interesting. I'm not really reserved to whether I think this is a good idea or a bad idea, whether it shouldn't be more gradual, perhaps. I don't know, maybe this jolt is necessary for the gamer, because again, I'm focusing on the story, I'm not focusing on the gameplay, and maybe that kind of jolt in the story is what sort of wakes up the gamer from just, you know, getting ready on the sticks to actually paying attention to what's going on. And what is going on is that she finally decides to go and sing, and she sings, and it's a beautiful, touching song. That's like wordless. She only enunciates with her voice, and it's like beautiful. And Cody like looks at her with like loving eyes, and then they suddenly, like, you know, it's Cody looking at her, whatever, and suddenly they like lift up above like these sticks, this audience, and like they have their kiss, and that's the end of the doll world. And then with that, the magic kind of like reappears. There's like kind of like a Shrek ripoff. If you have seen Shrek, in both the first Shrek and the second Shrek, at the end you see these like this magic dust go around these like Fiona and Shrek, and like, you know, transform them somehow. This one transformed them in a way that they disappeared, and they reappeared and reawakened in their real life bodies. And then there's this final scene where they finally reawake, and this this letter that they've been searching for, or that they've been trying to get from Dr. Hakim, is like they finally get it. They finally get the last piece. They've been getting a piece of that letter for every chapter that they completed in his therapy session, and they finally now became real, and they finally got the letter. So they looked at it, and it said, like when I was telling you about what I was telling you about earlier, of Rose saying that she know what she did. She didn't know, or she didn't mean that she transformed them into dolls. She meant that she blamed herself for the parents fighting, and she decided to run away. So the final scene is about them rushing to the bus stop and helping her realize that it isn't her fault. And then like the ending is sort of them walking back to the house. It isn't completely confirmed that they're now together, but I mean, they're happy. They're, you know, both holding on to Rose as they go back. It is kind of assumed, while not outright confirmed, that they will stay together, that they overcome this divorce thing, right? And that's pretty much the end of the story. My thoughts. Honestly, as a video game, this is probably the most important one. Like from my thoughts at least. As a video game, this is beautiful, original, absolutely unique, in a way that it portrays this really difficult topic. I feel like, as a video game, but as like a contained story, it has issues where obviously lots of movies or TV shows wouldn't have issues, and that is when the gameplay sort of crashes with the story, and the game mechanic a little bit crashes with the story as well, from like the moments that I described. So the story struggles from time to time. Sometimes it's less subtle than it probably should be, and sometimes it's sometimes like the gameplay makes sense, but the story doesn't. I didn't like that part. I know children tend to do that, blame themselves, but then I catch myself blaming parents for making the child think it's his fault. Yeah. You mean the part where Rose blamed herself, right? It is obvious. Like, I think it is meant to be like a part that's not. Yeah. I think it's meant to be like a part where, like obviously, like nobody likes that. It's horrendous. And did you not like it because you felt it's like a cliche that it's cliched thing to have in a movie or a TV show or a video game, of course? Because I feel like it does kind of happen, and I know loads of people. Like I am from a divorced family. Like my parents divorced when I was 4, but you know, I was probably too young to blame either like them or myself or anyone for that matter, because I was 4 years old. But I mean, it does make sense. Maybe it's too much of a simplification of the letter, because I do agree with you that like maybe it was meant to like confuse them, because at first they thought that the letter contained the solution to their crisis of being dolls, but in the end, like, the letter turned out to be just her like goodbye note, which obviously yeah, which was the issue. Which was the issue that that I wanted to raise as well, that maybe it was just like a hurried decision to like plop something there. Same, I was the child, and I think this is a sensitive topic, and maybe, yes, it shouldn't be portrayed as such an unhealthy cliche. Yeah, perhaps. I honestly didn't really see it that way, because it is somewhat like understandable. It is common like in real life as well, and like I think they needed to like increase the stakes at the end, I feel. So I understand why they did it. Maybe they could have thought of like a better idea or better way, because it would seem kind of dead if the daughter would just be there, and the only like bearing on what happens is that the child stops being sad, right? So maybe they needed something like that. But I agree that you know, perhaps like the portrayal of such a cliche wasn't maybe the best idea. But carrying on with the story, what I liked a lot was this hidden message, right? We talked all about the messages in like their special abilities, in their chapters, within the therapy sessions. All of that we covered. We don't have to get back to that. And that, I think, is that basically makes the story. It makes it more interesting, as like at least sometimes, or at least most of the time, it is kind of subtle. Sometimes it's not as subtle, but fortunately there are in these different chapters there are like hidden messages, and the story is alive and it feels alive. And the reason why it feels alive is that there are subtleties laid all around these chapters, I feel like, and I kind of wrote like all my interpretations of these chapters. And in my opinion, all these chapters relate to something that contributed to their relationship failing, and their kind of answer and approach in dealing with it. So it's not only like, you know, let's find our attraction again, but it's also about like bit more subtle things. Like, for example, the shed portrays small stuff. Yeah, small stuff like the vacuum that hasn't been cleaned, or the binoculars that I talked about that told them that Rose was crying, that have been left unused. You know, these little things that are like hidden away in like a shed, similarly to your mind. It could be like a simple thing, like, for example, you wanting your girlfriend or boyfriend to put the milk into the back of the fridge rather than into the door of the fridge. But they keep like not thinking about it. So small things like that that are hidden away in your head, and you don't perhaps think about it that much, but they are there, and they're part of the reason why your relationship is crumbling. So that's what I feel the shed is about. These small little things that are inconsequential on their own, but they are part of like building up the whole issue. They're part of the larger issue that you need to get over in this game in order to repair your broken relationship. Then of course there's the chapter 2. Again, that's a little bit of a little thing, and that's the tree chapter where the squirrels fight against the bees. And I felt like that was a little bit out of place in general. But it could be, you know, about not getting rid of the bees, general annoyances of stuff the other person doesn't do, for example, rather than, and could be like larger things like bees and stuff like that. But I feel like it's very much connected to the shed, and it could have like similar subtle messaging. I don't see much else into it, much else in it, because the bees and the squirrels, the whole battle, it kind of felt out of place a little bit. Too video gamey for me, you know. Then we have chapter 3, which could, apart from like their complete disregard of what is actually at play here, instead of working on their relationship, they try to you know, destroy something. They try to destroy their relationship rather than working on it. But apart from that, it could be like also their misguided efforts in their child rearing, in raising Rose, essentially killing the elephants, buying too many toys that May constantly complains about throughout the chapter, and Cody's resentment of May not playing with their daughter, and May's resentment of Cody that he buys her too many presents and stuff like that. All of this like comes onto the surface, and like it makes for like a larger issue that surrounds these smaller issues that I talked about within the shed, for example. Because child rearing obviously is an important stuff that makes or breaks a marriage, I imagine, when you have children. Then we have chapter 4, and that's the unrestored clock, or rather the broken cuckoo clock. And you know, it is left to rot unrepaired, just like their relationship, signifying no time left for the other person, I felt like. So that was the subtle one. The upper message was sort of, you know, like, make more time for me, you know, I can't clone myself, that kind of special ability stuff. But the subtle message was like making the time for each other. And that's also why the railing was there, like to connect in their times, like to connect in their busy days where they like go around parallel to each other to finally find that connection, to find that part of the day or part of their mind that's completely connected to that other person. Which of course reveals that the entire day is connected to that person, because the railings are leading together, right? They connect eventually. And then we have chapter 5, and that is the forgotten passion of their early years together. and how they let that wither away, because the entire town is frozen over and they need to ring all the bells in order to wake everybody up. But it's essentially a relationship that's frozen in time, with no warmth, no heat, that it's kind of like dead, and you have to wake it up. You have to wake up literally the spark of romance and have like the ice melt. You know, there's even a joke by Dr. Hakim at the beginning of this chapter, like break the ice. You know, it's just obviously like, very obvious. It's not subtle at all. But the underlying messages of like trying to wake up that sleepy town as much as you're trying to wake up that relationship, that spark within you, that is the subtle message that I feel gives it the depth that makes this overall a good story. And then you have chapter 6, which is about forgotten passions and therefore joy left out of their relationships. Joy again was a bit heavy-handed, but the subtleties of chapter 6 and 7 rather, and they are both about the passions and the support of the other one, or you know, so Cody's support for May's passion and May's support for Cody's passion. So that's what chapter 6 and chapter 7 is about. I think that's both the subtle. I already explained like the subtleties in chapter 6 when it comes to like the planting and supporting. The planting and the watering being like investment into your passion and support of the other person. But let's go overall. Obviously, it's a beautiful visual, beautiful design. It signifies important things in this couple's like relationship. You know, we have all of these different environments that signify different like places of interest and stuff like that. It shows the romance in its different areas, and the gameplay ties into the story quite well, especially in the latter half. Although, like, when it comes to the story, there are lots of very on-the-nose analogies, as I already said, and there's not a lot of subtlety in some of these chapters, like fixing the cuckoo clock to fix their relationship issues, or reviving a sleeping town to revive their early romance. Like there is the subtlety there when you look at it more deeply, like only slightly more, like slightly below the surface, then like it can get maybe like a little bit too obvious. The unfolding of the different layers of sentiment seems quite solid at the end. You mean what do you mean by that? You mean like in chapter 7, like in the attic, or like in general, like the entire latter half, or the second half rather of the game, where you have the therapy sessions and like work at the. Oh yeah, you mean like the feelings of like passion and whatever, attraction, and the other therapy sessions where they focus on a particular part of the relationship, and like unfold them and work on them separately. The consulting, the therapy, the couples counseling, essentially. That's what you mean, right, Cardamon? If so, yeah, then yeah, I completely agree. And you said the story started with small annoyances and keeps getting into deeper problems in the relationship. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So, what I think of it overall? Overall, it's a fantastic game that you know, is worth watching either a playthrough of for Disguised Toast or anyone. Jack, I think, has Jacksepticeye has also a playthrough of it with his girlfriend. It's an alright standalone story, and that is definitely worth experiencing, because I think a story like that isn't usually in a video game. What I mean by that is that it's a story that has subtleties, that has powerful both visuals and moments that are really emotional, and it is a story that could make a good movie, and that is not very common for video games. And this was a very good video game, very much worth it indeed. To watch, to experience, to play, I imagine as well. Like the gameplay seemed fun as well. I'm not here to really talk about it too much. But yeah, that's about it for It Takes Two. Nice analysis, thank you. And there's a scary book again. But yeah, let me know if you have any ideas about It Takes Two. What you liked, what you didn't like. I mean, we talked about it throughout, of course. But yeah, Ricardo, you said you liked the subtleties that I sort of outlaid in like the chapters, that like there are different levels to their issues of a relationship. Yeah, it is something that I think like lots of people grapple with. In a relationship, there's layers of issues that they need to work through, and lots of people, for example, see that issue. Like, you would hear very often, right, in a relationship where one partner would say, I see, like, I argue with him or with her all the time about such little things, like about where he keeps the milk, or like how he washes the dishes and stuff like that, and I don't know why we argue so much. And I think like this game does very well the kind of layering to show the kind of layering that happens in like a kind of like a broken relationship or a relationship in trouble, in crisis. And that's because these issues that you see when you ask yourself, why am I arguing with him or arguing with her so much? It's because there's this layer issue that you're focusing on, like where he puts the milk or she puts the milk, or you know, whatever, these small things, but that's only the layer. And then, you know, you go into the deeper layers, like for example, she didn't support me in my passion, or he doesn't understand that I need to work for a living, that I can't be there, and he tries to, you know, make me feel guilty about not being there and stuff like that. There's all these like massive issues that are covered by like these layers, this upper surface layer of like where he puts the milk, or how she cleans the dishes or whatever, which is what lots of people tend to focus on, rather than looking deeper at the issues, because for some people it's just impossible to look beyond that. As a game, great. As a story, I think it has faults, but it is a game, therefore it's a pretty good one. I agree with that as well. If this was an animated movie, I wouldn't be impressed. Interesting. I think... Yeah, thinking about it, I think I might be like impressed. Like maybe, because I thought about it, because for some reason, I don't know why, I thought about it as a movie or a TV show that would be contained, or as like or rather written in a completely different environment. But if this thing was literally an animated film, it would be one of the forgettable ones for me. Yeah, I understand that. Like, obviously, because it would work... The thing is, it would work completely differently as an animated film, because they do have to focus on gameplay, right? So large swaths of the gameplay wouldn't be there. Maybe like the bees and the squirrels. Maybe it would be there, like if it's a kids movie, like, right? So... I don't know, like comparing it to... So let's compare it... This is an interesting point, actually. So if we compare it to like Pixar movies, right? So like really cool, really good Pixar movies, like for example Finding Nemo, or Toy Story, or You're right, Anna. As a movie, it would be too cliche. As a video game, you have more empathy for the characters. Yeah, that's an important point as well. Like you do play for the characters, so you naturally become closer to them. But like yeah, if you compare it to like Toy Story and stuff like that, the stakes and the emotions there are obviously stronger. And then there is the issue that we kind of like talked about but didn't discuss like deeper. The whole game has this premise that divorce is bad and let's not divorce. And it's not explained, it's not delved deeper into why their divorce is bad. I mean, yes, it makes the child like sad, obviously, like any divorce would, but it kind of has the message that any divorce when you have a child just isn't good, and sometimes divorce even with children is important. On the other note, the movie about the situation between squirrels and bees could be developed into something so cool. Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Bee Movie, if you've seen that, with what is his name? Fuck, Seinfeld, right? Yeah, a Bee Movie, The Return. Yeah. I said that as well. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it could be. That it could be interesting. I like that movie. Yeah. It is kind of interesting. I found issues with that movie as well, though. Like, I mean, like this love relationship between the bee and the woman was a bit strange for me, to be honest. Like, it was difficult for me to get over. Like, to be perfectly honest with you.